Money FM 89.3. Best of breakfast. Morning Shot.
Yep, welcome along to Morning Shot with me, Emaad, Akhtar and Audrey, Siek. Recent data shows that Indonesia's consumer price index fell for the first time in more than 2 decades in February. This comes after the government gave a substantial discount on electricity bills to support economic growth.
Yes, and it's the second month in a row the annual CPI rate has come in below the central bank's inflation target range of 1.5% to 3.5%. Among the top contributors to the annual deflation, utilities and lower prices of food.
So what kind of spillover effects might this have on other Southeast Asian countries? Well, we're about to find out. For more insights, we're joined by Dr. O.A. Sun, Principal Advisor of the Pacific Research Center of Malaysia and also Senior Fellow at the Singapore Institute of International Affairs. Good morning, Dr. O.
Very good morning to all of you.
Yeah, great to have you on. Can you walk us through the key drivers of Indonesia's deflation and how this reflects the current state of the country's economy?
Well, the immediate trigger for this latest deflation in Indonesia would be, as was said, subsidies on electricity tariffs. Namely, people would pay lower. People as well as businesses would pay lower electricity tariffs, and thereby, well, apparently in Indonesia, energy prices would eat up a lot of your, if you are individuals, your income, and if you are businesses, your cost of doing business. So if electricity bill goes down, then, well, your prices would go down overall, so much so that you have a deflation now in Indonesia. That's an immediate trigger. But I think it also, in a sense, reflects that Indonesia's overall economy is rather, shall we say, well, I hate to use this term, but fragile. In terms that, number one, as I said, electricity and fuel makes up perhaps too high percentage of your income as well as your business costs. And number two, it does reflect, well, consumer spending, it's slowing down, or shall we say it never quite picked up after the pandemic. So that would be the larger picture here.
Yeah, I want to talk about this trend that you just talked about. We know that deflation is pretty uncommon, actually, especially in emerging markets. So you say that this brings about the trend of maybe consumers not spending too much in Indonesia. Could this signal a shift in spending patterns or even impact economic growth in the short term?
Well, I think at least in Indonesia, perhaps the economy has not really picked up after the pandemic, even though we heard of various foreign investors interested to invest in Indonesia. The interest perhaps sometimes stayed just interest and not really, putting money into Indonesia, and thereby you don't have, for example, a lot of, shall we say, high-quality job creations. Indonesia's economy still depends a lot on exports of commodities such as oil palm or palm oil and so forth, and minerals, for example. So if you need to have a more resilient economy, well, you need to create more so-called high-quality or value-added jobs, which requires, for example, a lot of specialized skills and knowledge. Then you create a vibrant middle class or even upper middle class, and people will have the extra money to spend. As it is now, you could see people earning just enough to cover their, well, in this case, electricity bills, as well as bills for food items here.
Yeah, and we're obviously smack in the middle of Ramadan as well, so there's naturally a lot less spending from the average consumer. Let's come back around to the Indonesian government's electricity tariff cuts that you alluded to earlier that seem to have been a major cause for deflation. How sustainable, Dr. O, is this approach? And do you think further cuts in rates, especially in utilities, could have unintended consequences on the country's fiscal health or inflation targets?
Well, it's essentially fuel subsidy, right? Like in Malaysia, for example, previously we had very heavy subsidies for petrol, and now it's cutting down. So Indonesia, similarly, they are now trying to subsidize electricity. Well, I think in the short term, it's going to alleviate all these high electricity bills for a short period of time. But if you continue to do this, then people and businesses will take advantage of this. For example, you will see people, not using the electricity more efficiently and so on. So it's gonna, just like any other subsidy, in the short run, it could be effective in stimulating the economy a little bit, but in the long run, you will have unintended consequences because people get reliant, people get dependent on these subsidies. Yeah.
So we know that the world is also pretty interconnected now. So let's look beyond Indonesia for a minute. Do you see any potential ripple effects on trade or consumer prices in neighboring countries like Malaysia?
Well, if this deflationary trend would continue in Indonesia, that means prices would come down in Indonesia. So in theory, it would stimulate Indonesia's export. So again, in the short run, it's good news for Indonesia. And when that happens, then if we are consumers in Malaysia, Singapore, and we are buying goods, our Indomies from Indonesia and so on, then, we will have cheaper prices in practice. But also, it would then have a competitive effect. For example, if Indonesian goods are so cheap, then how about Malaysian goods or how about Singaporean goods, right? Then we have to compete with Indonesia to have cheaper goods, and that perhaps would also have a so-called deflationary pressure on our own prices, Malaysian prices and Singapore prices.
Yeah, let's turn our attention to Singapore. I'm just reading a stat here. In 2023, Singapore exported over $18 billion worth of goods to Indonesia, with the main products being refined petroleum coke, and cyclic hydrocarbons. Now, do you think this potential deflationary spiral could impact Singapore's ability to export at such a large scale?
Indeed, if this deflationary trend is continuing in Indonesia, then the Indonesian rupiah may be hit as well. Namely, its value would lower. And when that happens, Indonesia would find more expensive to buy goods from, let's say, Malaysia or Singapore, and therefore they are less willing to buy. And if they are less willing to buy, then we can't sell more to them. So, it would also have that kind of effect. Yeah.
And could you see this shift in inflation also affecting consumer confidence or even altering investment patterns within Indonesia and across the Southeast Asian region as a whole?
Well, consumer confidence is both the cause and effect of such a deflationary trend. Number one, because consumers are finding it difficult to spend more, right? That's why you have this deflation, I mean, prices going down. But if prices are continuing to go down, then consumers will spend even less. Why? Because they thought, hey, if I don't buy today and I buy, let's say, a week from today, maybe it's even cheaper. Therefore, they would defer their purchasing decision. So it's like a double whammy. It's both the cost and effect of such a deflation. And in terms of investments, if you are talking about, let's say, foreign investments, when foreign investors looking at the average Indonesian consumers not spending a lot, then the foreign investors may not invest in those sectors which are consumer-oriented, the mass consumer kind of goods. But perhaps, since electricity is so cheap, they might spend a bit on. They might invest a bit on, let's say, industry which needs a lot of electricity, such as metal smelting. For example, Indonesia has a lot of metals. Yeah.
All right. Tough times ahead for Indonesia and possibly for the region as well. We've been talking about Indonesia's CPI falling for the first time in more than 2 decades in February and the kind of effects this might have on other Southeast Asian countries. Dr. Oh, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've been speaking with Dr. O.A. San, Principal Advisor of the Pacific Research Center of Malaysia and also Senior Fellow at the Singapore Institute of International Affairs. Money FM 89.3. Stay ahead of the game.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.